Hey everybody, I'm Bob. I normally do travel log stuff around Thailand and Asia, but the events in Miami around the building that had to be brought down by construction crews and controlled demolition, it caught my attention, and I really, although there was a lot of people talking about it on the news shows, it didn't really seem to me that they were really understood exactly what they were talking about. So I've demolitioned about 30 buildings, although that wasn't a prime, we were mainly road builders, but we could do demolition. So I thought I'd share a little bit of information with you about exactly how demolition works. Okay, for about 10 or 12 days we've been listening to people from the Miami news stations try to explain controlled demolition without a lot of success. I'm going to spend a little bit of time explaining how controlled demolition works and suggest some situations where it's very useful. Now, of course, if you're out in the middle of nowhere, you can pretty much blow something up or push it over pretty much at your leisure, and it doesn't matter exactly where things are going to fall. And you can use machines that are normally used for other construction projects, or you can use explosives, or you can just let it fall down all by itself. Now, when it comes to doing demolitions on chicken houses, there's more methane there than there is in the entire ocean. So if somebody offers you a demolition on a chicken house, don't do it. Stick with the structures. You'll be glad you did. Now, as I mentioned, if you're in the middle of nowhere, you can pretty much do what you want. But when you got to demolition something that's right next door to another property, especially if it's an expensive property, you've got to use controlled demolition, because that is the only way buildings fall within their own footprint. In other words, they don't go out in the street, they don't hit the building next door, they don't do any damage, and it's contained. Now, sometimes blankets can be used around the building that's going to be blown if it's really close to a lot of buildings that have exposed glass. Okay, we heard the word rebar, R-E-B-A-R, used a lot. Rebar are somewhere between 1/8 and 1 inch thick steel round beams that are put down and tied together before the concrete is poured. It results in something called pre-stressed concrete, and it's just stronger than regular concrete. But as was the case in Miami, the rebar had gotten water in it, it had swollen and separated the concrete in the building. So the rebar is a critical element that has to be kept dry. Now, for the purposes of this video, this is going to be a building, and we're going to demolition it. It's demolished. I'll tell you each step in the process so you get a feel for what's going on. Now, in general, in most rectangular or square buildings, you start as close to the middle as you can, because the trick is you're trying to get all of the stuff to fall into the middle and stay there where you've controlled the explosion, rather than let it dissipate into the neighborhood. Now, before the first big explosion goes off, construction demolition guys have gone through the building, and they've drilled and put explosives in the columns that hold up each floor. Now, after the first big explosion happens in the center of the building, at very, very small, like fractions of a second, explosions in the columns go off, and they've been timed so that as each one is exploded, it's falling into the cavity left by the center of the building, and the explosions go out, and each series of columns is a little bit after the last one, so it creates a fall to the center. And that's basically how they do it. Now, obviously, after that building comes down, they're still going to have to clean it up, and that's where your construction machines come in. And the last time I saw any updates out of Miami, that was the process they were in. I think they're very close to having it all cleaned up or not. So, controlled demolition is the way you control a building from falling on something you don't want it to fall on. And especially in cities and tight places, it is the go-to way of bringing down a building. So I really hope this explains a little bit about it without throwing around too much jargon. And whatever you do, don't blow yourself up.